Our next speaker is Augustine Mano. Augustine is the Managing Director of MRDC. Augustine, a real son of how Papua New Guinea has developed. The son of mother and father who are leaders in their own cultures and their villages. A well-educated Papua New Guinean who has now taken on the responsibility of being the caretaker of the equity and shareholding of our landowner companies across both mining and petroleum. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce you, Augustine, and listen to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. My presentation will be very simple, short. I'll be more focused on the past, present, and future in terms of focusing on the landowners and the legacy issues after the last 32 years of oil production, and then the transformation when PNG LNG came in, and lessons to learn from that, and moving forward, maybe 20, 30 years from now, what's the difference? Have we carried those tribes, villages with us in that process, or we've left them behind? So I'll start with that. But when we talk about shared future between the government, developers, and the landowners, I always like this triangle because it sums up this shared future. If you look at the first projects we've had in Kurubu, Gobi, Moran, the same principles were always there. And right in the middle of that is always been MRDC's role. I think in a way we are like the glue in all the three of them. So the balancing depends on how far you push in all of those three. So if you look at it, the project agreement, the benefit sharing agreement, and then the JV agreement that all comes with it. So as long as we try to work in the spirit of those three agreements, I think there is a shared future. And that's critical moving forward. Now, just to have a look at what has happened in the oil projects, when you look at some of the footprints, you know, on the project sides, you've got training, development, and on the government side, you do that. But there's this other side of the stories that sometimes that's where MRDC's role comes in. How do we lift them so that they get the same kind of services and development and improve quality of life that you get in Mosby or in various centers? So in the oil projects, we've seen a lot of those challenges, and you go from Yukurubu, you come down to all this pipeline, you know, nothing has changed very much to all these beneficiaries. And one of the critical failures is that the focus has always been on dividends, on the cash component, without knowing what the future is. I'll give you an example, like PRK, for example, in Kurubu, which is the first project. We've paid almost 500 million in dividends up to 2014. So everybody's happy, the current generation, they have, but what about the present and then the future? And that is where I think that is where PNG LNG comes in, that gives a second lease of life to all these projects so that we can learn from that, from Moran, from Gobi. Now you can imagine if there was no PNG LNG, we wouldn't have Gobi. Gobi would have been gone. 2009, it would have been abandoned. The revenues in Moran would be different. Even Kutubu. PNG LNG gave a new lease of life and a lesson to all the three producing oil projects so that we can have another 25 to 30 years and then learn from all this mistake. And that also talks about shows what is expected. The greenfields can learn from these oil projects and do better when it comes to the next 15 to 20 years of LNG production. Now, the other important thing is that, can we move the slide? Yes. The most important thing that gives us hope is, I think, is in the current Oil and Gas Act. And there's a particular section, I love it, is section 176, gives the mandate in how we can distribute equally the wealth and secures the future. And that is 40% for distribution, 30% for community infrastructure, and 30% for future generation. And you only access that 30% only after the project is abandoned. That legislation protects the interest of the future generation and the present. So when you look at that and you compare to the first oil production where we didn't have, in Kutubu, where we didn't have that legislation, and all the revenues that we received was all about dividends. The same mentality came to Moran, Gobi. And Gobi is a difficult case because of the landowner disputes, but if the same amount of money was given to the landowners, I don't think they'll be sufficient for investment or for these community projects. The first photo that I showed you is an indication of what the project impact area, how the people have lived. Now, the fundamentals that MRDC is working on to improve on the opportunities that the PNG LNG provides also includes the trust deed that we're trying to make all the respective landowners comply with, which is a very difficult one. Sometimes we have our own version of the Companies Act, but we're getting there. And then also the governance around it. So it's very, very difficult, but there has been some success, especially in terms of the areas where we have completed the clan vetting. We've tried it and the success has been outstanding. We all know that from the PNG LNG beneficiaries, we have completed the plant site. We went to the pipeline. We've completed that now recently, I think 2 months ago. And then we will go to the greenfields. But on the plant site, the success has been outstanding in terms of the governance. And when Cesar talks about gender equality, I think it came naturally. The chairperson of plant site is a clear example of that. She had to win, not because she was a female, but at her own right. They all voted her as the chairman of gas resource plant site. And for the landowners, it's a real achievement. So if you compare that to the photos that I showed you earlier, this is what we mean when we talk about getting revenues from the PNG LNG, the 30% that gets to work. In 4 years, we've spent almost 19 million. We've built almost 20 classrooms, 12 teachers' houses, 1 level 2 class rural hospitals. We've supported women in SMEs, and I've seen the changes it has done in just 4 years. And now we've started a program with the pipeline, with the clan vetting over. I'm sure most of these communities will see the changes that is coming. So the most important thing in all of those is bring those people up so that they can see that they are, when the project ends, they can see that they are part of those developments. I think what is more important in everything here is that it has to be sustainable. So when I look at it as 40-30-30 is our landowner's version of sovereign wealth fund, if you look at it in simple. So all these investments that we are doing is so that 25 years from now, when the PNG LNG is abandoned, or 30 years, they can see that the revenues or the investment, the asset base that they have is substantial enough that they can survive by making sure that there's 30% that goes to community infrastructure, so that they don't have to depend on government for their life, because that's what they've been doing. And we all know what the challenges are at the project, and they can still maintain and sustain that quality of life. So in short, I would like to thank the PNG LNG for giving all these brownfields and all these landowners another short time. And not only that, but without the project itself, we wouldn't have more incentives for Total and all the others to come in. And it's a game changer for us. And when we talk about transformation project, I think at the project area, it's all about how you manage what you have than how much you have. That is what matters. And 40-30-30 is the formula that can make all the landowners proud 30 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Augustine. And with the enviable job that you have and the success of MRDC, particularly under your leadership, I think slide 5, where you showed the 40-30-30 split. I think many of us look at this and we say we've created an MRDC in a Western company law situation where we're trying to manage the harvest of traditional people. But today's presentation, you explained to me that 40-30-30 split is a split that our traditional leaders did anyway. We ate part of the harvest. We shared that harvest and through your infrastructure and other things that you're doing. Then we kept some of the seedlings to plant again for future harvest. So in actual fact, the message for me in the presentation today is it's not that different. And I just want to congratulate you on the success of MRDC, and I do hope that viewers outside can pick up that particular picture.